Oh, welcome to Leadership Unscripted. I'm Kim Leifson, the owner and CEO of Hiring Strategies, where we are teaching organizations how to attract, engage, and keep top performing employees. Unfortunately, our guest, who is supposed to be here today, has not been able to log in yet. However, that doesn't mean that we can't continue this conversation. What I want to talk about today is what are those challenges with employees that you are frustrated by? What are the things that are keeping you up at night? Again, this is Leadership Unscripted. It is unscripted. We want to answer your questions and be a resource for you. So please feel free to jump in and ask any of those questions that you might have. I'm hoping TJ is going to join us. TJ Kastning from Ambassador Search and constructionrecruiting.com. He's also in that field, in the recruiting field, and is involved day to day with leaders who are struggling with attraction and retention issues. So hopefully he'll be able to join us. But if not, that's okay. Again, I think this can still be a very rich conversation. One of the things that I am hearing from my clients and out in the marketplace is we're getting applicants that are not qualified. How can we stop the inundation of hundreds of applications and only 5 of them being qualified? One of the things that you can do is make sure in your job description, you are defining very clearly what the job is. Sometimes our job descriptions aren't clear. They're too vague. They are boring. It makes this job sound boring because we just have a list of duties and responsibilities. I encourage you to go out on Indeed and look up jobs that are like yours. And I'm sure you will see a plethora of different styles, different kinds of job descriptions. Some read easier than others. Some are just horrible, boring, and nobody's going to apply for that job. Make sure that your job descriptions, the first couple of paragraphs, are the marketing piece. That is really what you want to be posting. You don't want to post the whole document. That first couple of paragraphs should be what's in it for the employee. What are they going to learn? What are the things that you have to offer? And I'm not talking about pay, and I'm not talking about benefits, and I'm not talking about all of those perks. I'm talking about what kind of culture do you have? What do people love about working for you? What kind of leadership do you have? It's very common that employees will follow leaders from one organization to another because they're so great to work with and for. So what kind of leadership do you have? Is it a safe space to work? Are you growing? Is there opportunity to solve problems and challenges? Make sure that you're putting that in that marketing piece. We are in an unprecedented employment economy right now. We've never before, at least to my knowledge, I've tried to do some research on this. I don't believe we've ever had another situation in our economy, in the history of our economy, where there are more jobs available than there are people to fill them. That means that people are not going to just take the next job. They are really going to search for the next opportunity that's right for them. They're going to demand things that they've never been able to demand before because there simply are enough jobs available. So it's time that we quit putting job descriptions out that are just a list of duties and responsibilities. We need to create a marketing document. And you can do this in one big, long document. The first 2 paragraphs, again, are your marketing piece. The rest is your duties and responsibilities and the expectations and outcomes for those duties and responsibilities. Let me give you a real easy example of that. if I'm asking someone to answer the phone, right? That's the responsibility, that's the duty. But the outcome and the expectation is that they're going to route those calls to the right people, that they are the voice, the first contact for people in our organization, and that should be a pleasant experience. So we're going to require that they have a 95% customer satisfaction rating. The expectation is that they can use a multi-line phone system. Those are the outcomes and expectations that we should be putting into the job descriptions. Because what happens is when someone reads that they can answer the phone, well, sure, anybody can answer the phone, right? But do I want to be the first point of contact for you? Am I really a pleasant sort of person that wants to put on niceties? I may not be. I may not be that individual who doesn't want to create a positive atmosphere. So I know that sounds ridiculous, but it's absolutely true. People will weed themselves out of applying for a job if they know what the expectation is. It's even better if you can put a rubric in there. If you don't know what a rubric is, it's a table that lists, here's the duty and responsibility. Here is what basic unsatisfactory performance looks like for that particular duty and responsibility. Here's what proficient looks like, and here's what exemplary looks like, so that you are being clear about what it is you want this person to do for you. What is the outcome you want them to achieve? So I think that's part of the problem with getting unqualified applicants is we're not being clear on what it is we want, and they're just applying for every job that semi-fits them. Now, I will say we're always going to have a certain percentage of applicants that aren't qualified, because there is a small percentage of people who are on unemployment. It is a small percentage, I promise you. If you haven't checked unemployment rates lately, they are the lowest they've been in decades. We have, I think it's 3.5% unemployment right now was the last number I saw within this last month. So there's not a lot of people applying for unemployment, but those that are required in order to maintain their unemployment to apply to so many positions. They have to prove that they've applied. So we will always have that, small percentage of people who are just going to apply. However, you can avoid some of those by making sure that your job descriptions are clear in describing your culture, in describing your leadership. What's the kind of organization that you are that someone would be attracted to apply to? Okay, so hopefully that helps with the problem of getting unqualified applicants. Another challenge that I'm finding with my clients is that they're telling me that people are applying, they're offering them the job, and within a week to 2 weeks, they're actually quitting. They've only been there for a week to 2 weeks. You've put in all this onboarding time. You've maybe done some training, not to mention the cost of hiring, and now you got to start all over again. Oh my goodness, this is expensive. It's a pain. It's frustrating. So how do we avoid that? Well, part of the reason that's happening, again, is that the employee was expecting something different. They thought that this was going to be a different experience, a different kind of culture, a different kind of manager, a different job. I actually took a job once where I thought the job was customer service. I was told it was a customer service role. I was the head of customer service. And when I got in there, it was not customer service at all. It was actually helping them write a program, which I had no experience or knowledge doing. And so I was failing miserably, and I only lasted 3 months. So I think part of the challenge is we're not being clear. We're not describing the roles in an effective manner for people to understand what it is that they're walking into. Maybe it's a hostile work environment that we didn't tell them about. Maybe they have a teammate that is absolutely horrible to work with. Maybe they have a leader who is toxic. Those are all things you really want to explore and understand and make sure you're being clear about before you hire someone into a role. I think that is part of the reason, the majority of the reason that people are quitting after accepting a brand new position. One of the other things that I am hearing is a challenge for leaders right now in attracting and engaging top performing people is that they are leaving for more money. They got offered a position that offered them $1.50 more an hour, or $10,000 more a year, whatever the case may be. And there's two comments around this. The first is 9 times out of 10, not always, but 9 times out of 10, if we are hiring for, or excuse me, if someone is telling us that they're leaving for money, that's really not the reason. It's the reason they're telling you. But most people will take a $1.50 pay cut for the right organization, for doing the right kind of work, for having impact, for following a dream, for having a purpose and a why that aligns with the organization. It's very common, and the research has shown that this is true most of the time. So if that's the reason they're telling you, that's probably not really the reason why they're leaving. You might want to think about doing exit interviews, or what I like even better, stay interviews. Talk to your employees who have been there a long time, who love the work that they're doing, who like working for you, and ask them why they stay. What is it about your culture? Ask them why they don't leave for another $1 an hour or 10,000 more a year. And then implement those things. Make sure that you have those things, that you're talking about those things, that you are putting those things in your job descriptions, right? This is why people like to work for us. The other thing that I just want to say that I think a lot of organizations have a hard time looking in the mirror on, and that is they don't have fair, competitive, and equitable pay. It's probably been 10 years since they've done a salary survey. And I don't know if you've recognized our economy has changed a bit, but it has. And so it's time for us to start reevaluating. Go do a salary survey. Call a pay organization. If you need someone, I have an expert that I can refer you to. But you want to make sure that your pay is fair, meaning they are getting a reasonable wage for the work that they're doing. You want to make sure that it's competitive, that you don't have to be the top paying person in your industry for that position. You don't have to be the lowest paying, or you can be, but you really want to be somewhere in the middle of what are most people paying for. Make sure that you know that information, that you've done your research. The third is equitable. Are we paying, and this is an internal measurement, are we paying people who are doing the same kinds of work equitable pay? Or are we paying some people more and some people less, and why? Why are we doing that? If it's about performance, that's okay. For any other reason, it's absolutely not. And what happens is that word spreads and they start talking and they find out, and then they're going to leave for work where they are going to be paid equitably, and they might make a little more an hour or a year. So that's an important thing to really pay attention to. If your people are telling you that they're leaving for more money, we are starting to see that slow down in the economy. It was a big deal during the Great Resignation. But now that things are starting to settle, I think we're going to see less and less of that. But always ask yourself the question, one, are they really leaving for pay? We might need to look in the mirror. And two, is our pay fair, competitive, and equitable? Another reason that we're hearing is a struggle right now, and I know you're all aware of this, is the remote work issue. Remote work is a big deal because candidates have the ability to demand what they want from their workplace, their leadership, and their job. They're demanding those things that are really important to them. And one of those is what I like to call work-life integration, not work-life balance. There is never work-life balance, right? Work-life balance is about everything gets equal, right? That doesn't exist. It never has, and it never will. Sometimes work takes a little more precedent, is more demanding, and sometimes our personal lives take a little more precedent and is more demanding. And we have to be able to integrate those two things together so that they work ultimately to balance each other out, but it's never going to be equal. And so we need to pay attention to that. And the way that we can do that as employers is twofold: to really look at our work and ask, can this be done remotely? Not, do I want it to be done remotely or not? That is a big difference. Wanting it to be done remotely is really about control. It's about, I can see them working. I know how many hours they've been there. I know whose car is in the parking lot at what time of the day. I know whose car is in the parking lot when I leave. That is about control. It's not about work. It's not about productivity. And it's certainly not about results and outcome. We need to shift our mindset to be about those results and those outcomes. How do we create an environment where outcome prevails, where we are talking about work in terms of results? And this is a little about what I talked about the job descriptions, right? Creating that rubric. What is it going to look like if they're doing this job really well? And what will they have achieved? If we can define for every role in our organization what they need to achieve, and what they need to achieve for basic and unsatisfactory, what they need to achieve for proficient, and what exemplary looks like, we've now just done our job to let them go do the work wherever and however they want to, as long as they deliver the results. And we've now created a performance review document, right? A performance management document that says, well, are you performing at level A, level B, or level C? Because level C actually gets paid more, right? We've got all this spelled out for them before we even posted the job description. And so now it doesn't matter where people do the work, as long as they're achieving the outcomes that they need to achieve. I think that is how we're going to get past this remote versus hybrid versus in-person work. I do think that there is, I know, there is some work that absolutely can't be done remotely. Surgeons cannot do their work remotely, although I think there's even some technology now that allows them to do it remotely because it's all done by robotics. But that's a whole nother conversation. Production line work cannot be done remotely unless we get robots to do that kind of work, which may be coming in some instances. It's there. Some types of work it is, but for the most part, most of the work in the United States, not all of it, most of it can be done remotely. So it's really looking at, is it just that we want control over it? Or is there truly something that we get or a benefit in productivity from having people working together collaboratively? That is important in some roles. And so it's really tearing our work down and understanding what's required and what the results are. So those are some of the things that I'm hearing. I don't see at this point any questions. So I want to encourage you to, if you're listening and you're curious about how to solve some of your employment issues, please go ahead and type those into the chat box, and I'd love to answer them. But those are really the things that my clients are currently struggling with. I think a big thing that we as employers need to do in this new economy is really take a look in the mirror. And that's sometimes really hard. My clients sometimes don't want the hard answer, which is it's really me that's causing this. It's leadership style, it's culture, toxicity in the organization. And we really do need to step back and look at how can we make a difference with employees who really do want to work. That is what we're finding. I know there's the millennials and the Gen Zers are getting a bad rap in the workplace, but it's not because they don't want to work. They're working. Our unemployment numbers show it. And there's even statistics that more of them are working percentage-wise than any other generation. So we really need to look at, maybe we're just talking to them. We need to talk to them differently. We need to communicate with them differently in order to get from them what we need to get from them, so that they can get from us what they need to get from us. That is a rich employment relationship. One of the things I also want to encourage you to do is to ask them, talk to your employees. What do they want? What do they need to feel whole, to want to work for you? Don't be afraid to have those conversations. I think they can be really, really valuable. And more importantly, you're not putting in a blanket benefit that your culture and the people that work for you don't necessarily need. That it might work really well for another organization, but it might not be what your employees want. So find out what it is they want. And the best and easiest way to do that is to have a conversation, to just go ask them the question. One of the other big things that is really important to these new generations is purpose. It's why. It's the bigger picture. How are we impacting the society? How are we impacting the environment? How are we impacting the social justice world? Those are really important things to the newer generations. And if we can't speak to how our organization is impacting those things, we're going to have a hard time attracting the newer generations. So pay attention to that. One of the other things that I am hearing on an ongoing basis right now, especially from the younger generations, is that they're not being treated like human beings in the hiring process. They're not getting a phone call back. They send a resume or an application into the void and they never hear anything. That's just poor human connection. And if you want employees to want to work for you, then we really need to make sure that we're treating them like human beings, because they are, and they're going to come work for us, and they're going to be in our charge. We're not going to be in charge of them. They're going to be in our charge. We're responsible for coaching and developing and growing them and helping them become the best version and employee that they can possibly be. So make sure that you're returning those calls. Make sure that if you're getting thousands of applications and you can't make a phone call every single time, then at least send emails. It's super easy to do an email campaign. Send an email to those who are not qualified and simply say, hey, we really appreciate you taking the time to apply. This is not the right opportunity for you, but we look forward to hopefully hearing from you in the future. Send an email to those that are qualified saying, hey, we appreciate your resume. You are being moved forward in our process. Hang tight for the next step. And for those who are top performers that you want to bring in right away, bring them in right away. Don't wait just because you got to get through the process. It's important that we're being responsive and human. This is a human process, and we're trying to automate too much of a human process. If you have a small number of applicants, once you narrow it down to your top 10 or 4 or 5, you should be making those phone calls. Those should be personal phone calls to each candidate, so that they understand where you're at in the process, so that they understand that you're making a connection with them and that they want to remain in the process. Because I can tell you one thing, if they don't remain in your process, they're going to go tell people why. And if your process is too laborious, too time consuming, not suggesting, by the way, that you skip steps that are important for evaluation, like assessments and skills tests and the interview. Those are all things you absolutely should be doing, but don't add things into the process to just make hoops for them to jump through. That is absolutely going to lose you candidates faster than you can imagine. What else? I think another thing that Generation Z and the millennials are looking for is organizations that have integrity and values. If you don't have integrity, if there is a system of bias, if there is a system of not telling the truth, not holding people accountable, not rewarding just some basic values, then they're going to leave. Those generations are holding us accountable to having integrity and being a workplace that is above par. So don't just put your values on the wall, live them, breathe them, talk about them, reward people for embodying those values. And that is how you're going to engage and keep top performing employees. So I don't see any questions at the moment. I'm going to sit here and just see if you have, if I want to give you a couple minutes to input those. And then I think we'll close out. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you listening. And hopefully next month, we'll have another topic that is going to be beneficial for you. But we're always here teaching organizations how to attract, engage, and keep top performing people is really what hiring strategies and leadership unscripted is all about. So don't hesitate to reach out if we can be of assistance in any way. Thank you so much for your time today. Have a great rest of your week, and we will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.